The question of how it is that we perceive qualities in things, paintings, books, melodies, plays, that we do not feel we can assert literally to be there has come in recent years into the very center of aesthetic theory. Neither the sentiments of the artist, which remain his nor those of the audience, which remain theirs, can count for the agitation of the painting of or the serenity of another. We attribute grandeur, wit, despair, exuberance to strings of sounds, lightness, energy, violence, fluidity to blocks of stone. Novels are said to have strength, buildings eloquence, plays momentum, ballets repose. In this realm of eccentric predicates, to say that the cockfight, it is in its perfect cases at least, is disquietiful, does not seem at all unnatural merely as I have just denied its practical consequence, somewhat puzzling. The disquietfulness arises somehow out of a conjunction of three attributes of the fight: its immediate dramatic shape, its metaphoric content, and its social context. A cultural figure against a social ground, the fight is at once a convulsive surge of animal hatred, a mock war of symbolical selves, and a formal simulation of status tensions. And its aesthetic power derives from its capacity to force together these diverse realities. The reason it is disquietiful is not that it has material effect. It has some, but they are minor. The reason that it is disquietiful is that joining pride to selfhood to Cox, and Cox to destruction, it brings to imaginative realization a dimension of Bellini's experience normally well obscured from view. The transfer of a sense of gravity into what is in itself a rather blank and unvarious spectacle, a commotion of beating wings and throbbing legs, is affected by interpreting it as expensive or something unsettling in the way its authors and audience live, or even more ominously that what they are. As a dramatic shape, the fight displays a characteristic that does not seem too remarkable until one realizes that it does not have to be there. A radically atomistical structure. Each match is a world unto itself, a particulate burst of form. There is the matchmaking, there is the betting, there is the fight, there is the result, utter triumph and utter defeat, and there is the hurried, embarrassed passing of money. The loser is not consoled. People drift away from him, look around him, leave him to assimilate his momentary descent into non-being, reset his face, and return, scarless and intact, to the fray. Nor are winners congratulated, or events rehashed. Once a match is ended, the crowd's attention turns totally to the next, with no looking back. A shadow of the experience no doubt remains with the principals, perhaps even with some of the witnesses of a deep fight. as it remains with us when we leave the theater after seeing a powerful play well performed, but it quite soon fades to become at most a schematic memory, a diffuse glow, or an abstract shudder, and usually not even that. Any expressive form lives only in its own present, the one it itself creates. But here that present is severed into a string of flashes, some more bright than others, but all of them disconnected aesthetic quanta. Whatever the cockfight says, it says in spores. But as I have argued lengthily elsewhere, the Balinese live in spores. They live as they arrange. They live as they arrange it and perceive it. Is less a flow, a directional movement, a directional movement out of the past through the present toward the future, and an on-off pulsation of meaning and vacuity. And a rhythmic alteration of short periods when something that is something significant is happening, and equally short ones where nothing that is nothing much is between what they themselves call full and empty times, or in another idiom, junctures and holes. In focusing activity down to a burning glass dot, the cockfight is merely being Balinese in the same way in which everything from the nomadic counters of everyday life through the clanging pointillism of gamelan music to the visiting day of the gods temple celebrations are. It is not an imitation of the punctuateness of Balinese social life, nor a depiction of it, nor even an expression of it. It is an example of it, carefully prepared. If one dimension of the cockfight structure it lacks of temporal directionality, makes it seem a typical segment of a general social life. However, the other is flat out, head to head, or spurs to spurs. Aggressiveness makes it seem a contradiction, a reversal, even a subversion of it. In the normal course of things, the Balinese are shy to the point of obsessiveness, of open conflict, oblique, conscious, subdued, controlled, masters of indirection and dissimulation, what they call alus, polished, smooth. They rarely face what they can turn away from, rarely resist what they can evade. But here they portray themselves as wild and murderous, with manic explosions of instinctual cruelty, a powerful rendering of life as the Balinese most deeply do not want it. To adapt a phrase Fry has used of Gloucester blinding, is said in the context of a sample of it, as they do in fact have it, and because the context suggests that the rendering, if less than straightforward description, is nonetheless more than an idle fancy. It is here that the disquietfulness of the fight, nor or anyway not necessarily its patrons, who seem in fact rather thoroughly to enjoy it, emerges. The slaughter in the cock ring is not a depiction of how things literally are among men, but what is almost worse, of how, from a particular angle, they imaginatively are. The angle, of course, is stratificatory. What, as we have already seen, already seen. The cockfight talks most forcibly about its status relationships and what it says about them, and that they are matter of life and death. That prestige, that prestige is a profoundly serious business, is apparent everywhere, one looks in Bali, in the village, the family, the economy, the state. A peculiar fusion of Polynesian title ranks and Hindu castes. The hierarchy of pride is the moral backbone of the society. But only in the cockfight are the sentiments upon which that hierarchy rests revealed in their natural colors, enveloped elsewhere in a haze of etiquette, a thick cloud of euphemism and ceremony, gesture and illusion and allusion. They are here expressed in only the tiniest disguise of an animal mask, a mask which in fact demonstrates them far more effectively than it conceals them. Jealousy is as much a part of Bali as poise, envy, as grace, brutality, as charm. But without the cockfight, the Balinese will have a much less certain understanding of them, which is presumably why their value is so high. Any expressive form works when it works by disarranging semantic context is in such a way that properties conventionally ascribed to certain things are unconventionally ascribed to others, which are them seem actually to possess them. To call the wind a cripple, as Stevens does, to fix stone and manipulate timber, as Schoenberg does, or closer to our case, to picture an art critic and a dissolute bear, as Hogarth does, it is to cross conceptual wires. The established conjunctions between objects and their qualities are altered, and phenomena of foul weather, melodic shape, or cultural journalism are clothed in signifiers which normally points to other referents. Similarly, to connect the collisions of roosters with the divisiveness of status is to invite a transfer of perceptions from the former to the latter, a transfer which is at once a description and a judgment. Logically, the transfer could, of course, as well to the other way, but like most of the rest of us, the Balinese are a great deal more interested in understanding men than they are in understanding cocks. What sets the cockfight apart from the ordinary course of life lifts it from the realm of everyday practical affairs and surrounds it with an aura of enlarged importance is not, as functionalist sociology will have it, that is reinforced status discriminations. Such reinforcement is hardly necessary in a society where every act proclaims them, but that it provides a metasocial commentary upon the whole latter of assorting human beings into fixed hierarchical ranks and then organizing the major part of collective existence around that assortment. Its function, if you want to call it that, is interpretive. It is a Balinese reading of Balinese experience, a story they tell themselves about themselves. Say something of something. To put the matter this way is to engage is to engage in a bit of metaphorical refocusing of one's own, for it shifts the analysis of cultural forms from an endeavor in general parallel to dissecting an organism, diagnosing a symptom, deciphering a code, or ordering a system. The dominant analogy is in contemporary anthropology to one in general parallel with penetrating a literary text. If one takes the cockfight or any other collectively sustained symbolic structure as a means of saying something of something, to invoke a famous Aristotelian tag, then one is faced with a problem not in social mechanics but social semantics. For the anthropologists whose concern is with formulating sociological principles, not with promoting or appreciating cockfights, the question is, what does one learn about such principles from examining culture as an assemblage of texts? Such an extension of the notion of a text beyond writer material and even beyond verbal is, though metaphorical, not of course all that novel. The interpretatio naturae tradition of the Middle Ages, which culminating in Spinoza, attempt to read nature as scripture, the Nietzschean effort to treat value system as glosses on the will to power, or the Marxian one to treat them as glosses on property relations, and the Freudian replacement of the enigmatic text of the manifest dream with the plain one of the latent, all offer precedents, if not equally recommendable ones. But the idea remains theoretically undeveloped, and the more profound corollary, so far as anthropology is concerned, that cultural forms can be treated as texts, as imaginative works built out of social materials, has yet to be systematically exploited. In the case at hand, to treat the cockfight as a text is to bring out a feature of it. In my opinion, the central feature of it, that treating it as a rite of or pastime, the two most obvious alternatives will tend to obscure its use of emotion for cognitive ends. What the cockfight says it says in a vocabulary of sentiment, the thrill of risk, the despair of loss, the pleasure of triumph. Yet what it says is not merely what risk is exciting, loss depressing, or triumph gratifying, banal tautologies of affect, but that it is of these emotions, those exemplate that society is built and individuals are put together. Attending cockfights and participating in them is for the Balinese a kind of sentimental education. What he learns there is what his culture's ethos and his primitive sensibility, or anyway certain aspects of them, look like when spelled out externally in a collective text. That the two are near enough alike to be articulated in the symbolics of a single such text, and the disquieting part that the text in which this revelation is accomplished consists of a chicken hacking another Miss Lizzie to bits. Every people, the proverb has it, loves its own form of violence. The cockfight in the Balinese reflection on theirs, on its look, its uses, its force, its fascination, drawing on almost every level of Balinese experience, It brings together themes: animal savagery, male narcissism, opponent gambling, status rivalry, mass excitement, blood sacrifice, whose main connection is their involvement with rage and the fear of rage, and binding them into a set of rules which at once contains them and allows them play, builds a symbolic structure in which over and over again the reality of their inner affiliation can be intelligibly felt. If to quote Northrop Frye again, we go to see Macbeth to learn what a man feels like after he has gained a kingdom and lost his soul. Ballinists go to cockfights and find out what a man, usually composed, aloof, almost obsessively self-absorbed, a kind of moral autocosm, feel like when attacked, tormented, challenged, insulted, and driven in result to the extremes of fury. He has totally triumphed, or been brought totally low. The whole passage, as it takes us back to Aristotle, though to the poetics rather than the hermeneutics, is worth quotation.